While I was far from home on a business trip, my parents sold my dream sports car to pay for my sister's luxury getaway. When I got back, my Laura Carter looked me dead in the eye and said, "Thanks to your car, our daughter is having the time of her life." I did not yell. I did not break. She told me that later when I confronted her on the phone, I just laughed because the car they sold, the one they thought would finally put me back in my place, was not the real one at all. And in that moment, standing in the mess they had left behind, I realized this was not just about a car. It was about 30 years of being used, overlooked, and expected to stay quiet. My name is Ryan Carter, and if you have ever been the forgotten one, the responsible one, the one they expected to sacrifice everything without being asked, then maybe you will understand why this still hurts. Before I share my story, I want to know you are here with me. I love hearing how far my story reach. Sometimes even the smallest connection can make a story feel heard. Thank you. And now, here is my story. Before we begin, if you feel for people who have been pushed aside by the very family meant to protect them, go ahead and subscribe. It means more than you know. I am Ryan, and this is how everything finally broke. I have spent the last few years building a life that finally feels like mine. I am 30 now, a robotics engineer living in a high-rise in downtown Los Angeles, surrounded by glass walls, late-night coding sessions, and the quiet hum of machines that make more sense to me than most people ever have. Back then, though, before everything happened, I still lived in a small apartment near Santa Monica. But this story does not start here. It starts years ago in a house where I learned early that I was the shadow while someone else was the spotlight. It starts with the feeling of being present but unseen, needed, but never valued, tolerated, but never celebrated. And it starts with the one thing I thought my family could never touch. The Aquila V12 Eclipse. The car I spent 7 years saving for. The car that symbolized freedom in a life where almost nothing belonged to me. I grew up in Pacific Palisades, Los Angeles, in one of those pristine neighborhoods where families cared more about how things looked than how things felt. My parents Laura and James Carter built their lives around image neighborhood brunches, charity galas, curated conversations about success. And in their perfect world, Olivia Carter, my younger sister, fit the picture flawlessly. She was the kind of daughter they loved to parade around, photogenic, charming, naturally good at winning attention. By the time she was 14, she already had thousands of followers posting sun-drenched photos and glittery outfits, while I spent my afternoons fixing laptops, tutoring algebra, and writing my first lines of code for neighbors who never remembered my name. Under the same roof, 2 different worlds existed. Hers lit like a stage mine, dim and quiet, defined by effort no one cared to notice. The favoritism was not subtle. It was the language of our household. On her birthdays, she unwrapped designer bags, new phones, a ring light setup. On mine, I received a small envelope with a polite smile and the familiar line, "Buy whatever you think you need." When I got accepted into UC San Diego for robotics, a dream I had chased since middle school, my mother Laura Carter barely looked up from showing Olivia Carter how to pose for her newest milestone, 12,000 followers. But when Olivia Carter failed her first semester of community college, they did not scold her. They called her too creative to be boxed in by traditional education, as if failure were a badge of honor she earned simply by being their star. Through it all, I worked. I took on late-night shifts in the campus tech lab, joined research teams, wrote software for side gigs, applied for grants. Anything to inch closer to the one thing I promised myself. Owning a real car, not a cheap hand-me-down, not a borrowed one. Something that represented my own win untouched by anyone else's expectations. When I finally bought the Aquila V12 Eclipse, a custom hybrid beast with lines sharp enough to cut air, it was more than metal and horsepower. It was proof that hard work meant something even if my family did not see it. It was the first time I felt legitimate visible to myself, if not to them. But the day I brought it home, Olivia Carter smirked like I had just made the world's most pointless purchase. She said something about how I should relax and maybe find someone rich to take care of me so I did not have to work myself into an early grave. My parents laughed with her, calling the car a phase away, something I would regret. Standing there with the keys in my hand, pride swelling in my chest, all I could feel was their dismissal wrapping around me like cold water. And somewhere between their laughter and the metallic gleam of the Aquila under the garage light, something uneasy settled in my gut. For the first time, I wondered if they would cross a line they had never crossed before, if they would try to claim something that was not theirs. If they saw my success as something they could strip away the moment it inconvenienced them, I did not know it then. But the car that finally made me feel whole would soon become the center of a betrayal I never saw coming. If I had known what waited for me months later, I would not have left the city at all. By the time I had spent 3 years working in Venice, Los Angeles, I finally felt like I had stepped into the world I had always wanted. I lived in a modest apartment near Santa Monica, close enough to walk to the office when the ocean breeze was good. My company trusted me, handing me projects that stretched my limits. AI mobility systems, prototype automation models, things that lit me up inside in ways my family never understood. But even as my career rose, the dynamic at home remained frozen in time. Every accomplishment I shared, my first promotion, my first big contract, the recognition from a major tech conference was overshadowed within seconds. My Laura Carter would glance at her phone, gasp, and pivot the conversation to Olivia Carter. A new brand deal, a new photo shoot, a new emotional crisis, she needed them to manage. The further I stepped into my own life, the deeper the crack between us grew. Whenever I hinted at boundaries, my parents interpreted them as obstacles. When Olivia Carter dropped out of her makeup program because it was too emotionally draining, they told me to be supportive. When she blew through her savings on clothes she never wore twice, they insisted I encourage her creative journey. Meanwhile, at work, I was surrounded by people like Brian and Sophia, steady, brilliant, grounded. We spent our breaks talking about build failures, ideas for robotics improvements, not follower counts or aesthetic filters. Being around them showed me just how different my world had become from the one I was raised in. Then came the first real warning. One evening, I drove down to Pacific Palisades, Los Angeles for dinner, hoping stupidly that we could have a normal night. Instead, I walked into the living room and saw Olivia Carter presenting what she dramatically called her self-healing recovery plan. It was a printed mood board of Malibu beaches, spa retreats, and luxury resorts. She told them she was burnt out, destroyed by the pressure of maintaining her social presence. She cried. My parents wrapped her in a hug like she had survived a war. And then, as if the script had been written long before I arrived, they turned to me. My Laura Carter said, "Your sister needs to heal. We are all contributing. Of course, you will help too." The expectation was so automatic, so ingrained, that my refusal shocked them more than her demands shocked me. Their faces hardened instantly, as if saying no was an act of betrayal. On my way out, my James Carter followed me to the driveway. He tried to soften the conversation, but halfway through he said quietly, "You do not use that car much anyway." The words froze me. There was a tone underneath, casual, dismissive, but unsettling. The implication was not about driving frequency. It was about ownership, about entitlement. I remember gripping my keys tighter, suddenly aware of how fragile the line between mine and theirs might be in their minds. I left the house with tension buzzing under my skin. I told myself I was overreacting, that no matter how intrusive they were emotionally, they would never cross into something as blatant as touching what belonged to me. But as I drove back to Santa Monica, the headlights carving through the night, a quiet thought settled deep in my chest. Maybe I did not know them as well as I believed. Maybe I had underestimated just how far they were willing to go. I felt the urge to double-check everything, relock the garage, update the security system, keep the keys close, but I did not. I trusted that they would not do anything outrageous. Looking back, that was the first mistake in a chain that would cost me more than I ever imagined. When my company told me they wanted me to lead a 3-month deployment project in Seattle, a fully automated system for one of Amazon's warehouses, I should have been ecstatic. It was the kind of assignment people in my field waited years to be trusted with. A chance to test my work on a massive scale to build something that would actually affect the world outside the clean white walls of a research lab. I felt the pressure immediately, but I also felt something close to pride. It was the kind of news I thought my family might finally acknowledge. But when I told them, they barely reacted. My Laura Carter gave a distracted nod and said she hoped I would manage my temperament better this time. My James Carter asked a half-hearted, "So when are you leaving?" but only so he could return to comforting Olivia Carter, who was going through yet another dramatic breakup. Their entire focus was on her heartbreak, her tears, her demands for constant attention. What caught me off guard was what my Laura Carter said next. 3 months is a long time to be gone. Leaving the car sitting there is such a waste. She said it lightly, as if it were an offhand comment about the weather, but it tightened something in my chest. It was not the first time they had hinted at the car, but this time it felt pointed. I tried to brush off the unease, but the way she said it stayed with me the rest of the night. Something in her tone made me feel like they were discussing more than they were saying. That feeling only grew stronger the night before I left. I checked my home camera system out of habit and saw my Laura Carter walking around my living room. She moved with the confident familiarity of someone in their own house, opening closets, glancing into drawers, even standing over my desk as if trying to make sense of my notes. When I called her, she claimed she was checking if I had forgotten anything important. The explanation was thin, but I did not have the energy to interrogate her. Instead, I changed every password on my smart system. I told myself that would be enough, even though I had not yet changed my physical locks, something I would regret more than anything. Later the next morning, as I packed the last of my luggage, Olivia Carter sent me a message that felt like a shard of something sharp under my skin. "Thanks again. I will miss your car." I stared at the screen, trying to decode the meaning, wondering if she was just being passive-aggressive in her usual way. I dismissed it. That was my second mistake. Before I left for the airport, my James Carter asked me in a voice too casual to be casual where I usually parked the car and whether I had left the spare key in its usual spot. He phrased it as if he were worried about theft or damage, but the timing was too strange. The questions did not sound like concern. They sounded like preparation. Every instinct in me was whispering that something was wrong, but nothing was concrete enough to confront. No evidence, just the vague, persistent sense that I was being watched and evaluated like a problem they were planning to solve. Still, I boarded the plane to Seattle, trying to silence the unease twisting through my stomach. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid, that my family, despite everything, would never cross a boundary as serious as touching my home or my car. I did not know it then, but walking onto that plane was exactly what they had been waiting for. I looked out the window as the plane lifted off, feeling something slip out of my hands without knowing what it was. I told myself I would deal with everything when I got back. I had no idea that by then the damage would already be done. Seattle was gray, wet, and humming with the kind of productivity that makes you forget entire days at a time. My temporary apartment in South Lake Union overlooked a grid of tech buildings and docks. And most mornings I woke up before the sun to meet with teams, troubleshoot prototypes, and rewrite code that refused to behave. The project was demanding, the kind that ate hours without warning and left me collapsing into bed long after midnight. In a strange way, the chaos was comforting. It kept my mind off the quiet worry that had followed me from California. But the calls from home made that worry impossible to ignore. My Laura Carter rarely asked how the project was going. Instead, every conversation became an update on how improved Olivia Carter seemed. She spoke about her in glowing terms, praising her emotional recovery, talking about a special plan that was helping her relax. Yet each time she mentioned it, I could hear something faint in the background of our calls. A distant whooshing sound, rhythmic and unmistakable waves, and once a ukulele being strummed out of tune. When I asked if she was at the beach, she insisted she was at home. It did not make sense, but I let it go. One afternoon, while waiting for a build to compile, I scrolled through social media to kill time. A friend of Olivia Carter had posted a story, a bright photo of Olivia laughing in a white robe holding a cocktail. The caption tagged at a luxury resort in Malibu. I froze. My family had told me she was still in California. The resort was one of those places with private infinity pools and spa packages worth more than a month of my rent. I checked the timestamp. It was recent. Suddenly, my Laura Carter's mysterious plan and the ocean sounds made sense, and none of it pointed to anything good. 2 nights later, my phone buzzed with a notification from my garage app. The garage door had opened at 3:00 in the morning. The system rarely made mistakes. My heart slammed against my ribs. I called my James Carter immediately, demanding an explanation. He sounded groggy and annoyed, claiming it was probably just the wind messing with the sensor. But when I accessed the remote camera footage, the footage showed a shadow moving past the lens. A shape with posture and movement I recognized. The dread that had been sitting quietly inside me began to grow. Every sign pointed towards something being done behind my back, something deliberate, something involving my car. I replayed the footage again and again as the realization settled into my bones. They were not just hiding things from me. They were actively doing something they knew I would not approve of, something they needed me far away to accomplish. By the 3rd week, I could hardly focus on my work. Every call from home was filled with half answers and tight voices. Every social media post I stumbled across revealed another piece of a vacation Olivia Carter should not have been able to afford. Every night before I went to sleep, I checked the garage app, terrified I would see another alert. And with every passing day, the silence surrounding my car felt heavier. Eventually, the unease became unbearable. I approached my project director and asked if there was any way I could return to Los Angeles earlier than planned, framing it as an urgent personal matter. He hesitated but agreed, telling me to finish what I could and hand off the rest. As I packed my bags, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever I was walking back into it was not going to be small. The betrayal had already happened. I just did not know how deep it went. By the time my plane touched down in California, exhaustion clung to me like a second skin. 3 months away felt longer than it should have, and the entire drive from the airport back to Santa Monica carried a strange, pulsing heaviness. It was the kind of instinct you do not want to acknowledge, the kind your mind tries to rationalize, but your body already knows the truth. I kept telling myself I was overthinking everything, that the uneasiness was just jet lag. But every mile I drove, the feeling grew sharper, heavier, like something waiting just beyond the turn into my complex. When I finally pulled into the garage and keyed in my access code, the door lifted with its familiar hum, then stopped halfway. My eyes locked on the empty space directly in front of me, the space where the Aquila V12 Eclipse had always been. For a long moment, I just stood there, hands frozen on the steering wheel, trying to convince myself that I had somehow misremembered the parking spot. I stepped out, walked toward the empty concrete square, and stared at the bare oil marks, as if the car might materialize if I blinked slow enough. But the app on my phone confirmed the thing I did not want to accept. The car had been moved 3 weeks prior. No motion alerts, no permission granted, no record of my key, just an entry labeled manual override. I walked upstairs, feeling the weight of something irreversible settling on my shoulders. When I opened the door to my apartment, the scene hit me like a punch to the gut. Olivia Carter was sprawled across my sofa, wrapped in a silk robe, surrounded by shopping bags from luxury brands I could not even pronounce. She looked up at me with the easy entitlement of someone who believed the world naturally bent around her. I asked why she was here. She shrugged and said, "I used the key Laura Carter gave me." The casualness in her voice made the air feel thinner. Before I could gather myself enough to demand answers, she smirked and said, "Malibu was incredible, by the way. Thanks for that." I stared at her, not sure I had heard correctly. She was glowing with post-vacation bliss. Her skin bronzed her nails, freshly done. Her hair styled like she had just stepped out of a resort photo shoot. I asked her what she meant, and her smile widened, cruel and self-satisfied. She told me the family decision had been to sell my car and fund her retreat, her healing journey, as she called it. She described the resort, the spa treatments, the fine dining, like she was recounting a heroic tale, not a confession. I felt a ringing in my ears like the world had narrowed to a pinpoint. I grabbed my phone and called my Laura Carter, demanding an explanation. She did not deny it. In fact, she sounded irritated that I was calling at all. "You were not using it," she said. "That car gave your sister the chance to recover. You should be grateful." I asked her how she could justify selling something that did not belong to her. She did not hesitate. "You were gone. Family comes first. Olivia Carter needed it more than you ever will." Her voice was not apologetic or even defensive. It was condescending, cold enough to sting. She truly believed I would not dare question her, that I would accept this the way I had accepted every slight for 30 years. And then she added, "You are being dramatic. Cars can be replaced. Your sister's well-being cannot." I hung up before I said something I could not take back. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I stared at Olivia Carter, who was holding up a new handbag, admiring it under the living room lights like she was in a boutique. She had no remorse, no hesitation, no awareness of what she had taken from me. In her mind, the world, my world, existed solely to prop hers up. Standing there, surrounded by the evidence of their complete disregard for me, something inside finally shifted. For the first time in my life, anger did not dissolve into resignation. It solidified. I looked straight at her and said quietly, "This time I am not letting it go." And I meant every word. After Olivia Carter finally left my apartment carrying her bags as if she were moving out of a hotel suite instead of a home she had broken into, I stood in the middle of the room and tried to breathe through the chaos. Anger was not new to me, but this kind felt different, sharper focused. Instead of spinning out of control, my thoughts snapped into clarity. I opened my laptop, pulled up every camera feed, every notification, every system log. I combed through receipts and garage entries, piecing together what Olivia Carter had bragged about. Each detail matched her story. The garage opening during my trip, the unauthorized key access, the sale recorded under my Laura Carter's name, the deposit sent to Olivia's account and immediately drained by resort charges. Then a realization hit me, one that pierced through the fury like a beam of cold light. They had not actually sold the real car. The Aquila V12 Eclipse was still safe stored in a secure research facility in Los Angeles. Months before leaving for Seattle, I had sent the real vehicle in for sensor calibration tests. What they had sold was the prototype replica I had built as part of a robotic mobility experiment. It looked identical from the outside, but its internal systems were incomplete, running on stripped-down components meant for software simulations. I had forgotten I even left it in the garage. Most people would have felt relieved, maybe even amused. But the truth landed differently. The car did not matter, not in the way they thought it did. What mattered was the violation itself, the keys they used without asking, the entry into my home, the entitlement to my things, the way they believed they could take anything of mine and bend it to their purpose. It was not about the vehicle. It was about dignity boundaries and the simple fact that they had never seen me as a separate person with a life of my own. As I reviewed the footage from my home cameras, the situation grew even darker. They had not just entered once. They had come in 3 separate times in a single week. Once my James Carter went through drawers in my study. Once my Laura Carter opened my filing cabinet, flipping through personal documents. The worst part came when I found footage of Olivia Carter throwing what looked like a small get-together in my apartment. Music played, loud. People sat with their feet on my table. Someone spilled a drink on my rug. I discovered a broken shelf, a scratched leather chair, and a fried motherboard from a device I had been prototyping. A friend of hers had saved a copy of the now-deleted video and sent it to me without hesitation. Every piece of evidence built the same truth. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate invasion, a calculated act backed by the belief that I would not fight back. I put everything into a folder: videos, receipts, screenshots, door logs. It was overwhelming to look at all at once. But the more I organized, the stronger I felt. By the time I finished, my anger had cooled into something far more dangerous to the people who underestimated me: resolve. I called an attorney I knew in Santa Monica, someone who had helped a friend through a complicated property dispute. When I explained what happened, she did not hesitate. They violated multiple laws. You have overwhelming proof. If you pursue this, you will win. Hearing that did not bring joy. It brought clarity. This was not about revenge. It was about drawing a line that should have been drawn years ago. I stood in the middle of my damaged apartment and let the silence settle. Then I said it out loud to myself, to the room, to everything I had allowed for too long. I am done letting them do this. I am going all the way. For the first time in my life, I was not afraid of the conflict. I was ready for it. When my family found out I had officially filed the lawsuit, the reaction was immediate and explosive. My phone buzzed nonstop until I finally turned it face down on the counter. The first call came from my Laura Carter, her voice high and frantic, but not in the way I had expected. She was not ashamed. She was not apologizing. She was furious that I had dared to make our conflict public. "You need to stop this," she snapped. "Do you have any idea what this will do to the Carter name? You are humiliating us. Withdraw the complaint before you destroy everything your father and I built." She spoke like our family reputation was the only thing worth protecting, as if my rights, my boundaries, and my dignity were trivial inconveniences. The next blow came quickly. My James Carter hired a lawyer known for aggressive counterattacks. They claimed I was mentally unstable, incapable of rational decisions, and driven by resentment. They even dug up an old period of burnout from my college years and held it up as if it were evidence of lifelong dysfunction. The message was clear. If they could not guilt me, they would invalidate me. I should not have been surprised when Olivia Carter joined in. True to form, she posted a vague story about being emotionally scarred by someone close and hinted that I had threatened the family before. The post spread through the Pacific Palisades community group in hours, amplified by people who loved gossip more than truth. Colleagues saw it, acquaintances saw it, and even though many reached out privately to check in, the embarrassment settled in my stomach like a stone. Then came the part that hurt more than I expected. My parents began calling relatives, painting me as an ungrateful son who had abandoned the family and refused to help his sister during her fragile mental state. They even claimed I had sold my own car to buy gaming equipment, a lie so absurd I did not know whether to laugh or break something. Hearing from cousins that my family was rewriting my history in real time only strengthened my resolve. If they wanted a war, they had one. I channeled my anger into preparation. I gathered every piece of proof video of them entering my home without permission. The garage logs, the forged documents tied to the car sale, the hallway footage, showing they were in the building while I was in Seattle. I printed copies, backed up drives, annotated everything. Social media became another battlefield. Olivia Carter's posts created an entire narrative about my obsession with material things, all while she flaunted outfits she bought using money from the car she had taken. One afternoon, I sat across from my attorney, and she looked me straight in the eyes. If you go through with this, there is no going back. You are cutting ties." I nodded without hesitation. I cut ties the moment they sold what was not theirs. She did not argue. She simply slid the documents across the table. I signed each page slowly, not because I doubted my choice, but because I understood the weight of it. When the last signature dried, something inside me settled. I was not fighting for revenge. I was fighting for the right to my own life. But the pressure did not stop. My Laura Carter's messages alternated between pleading and threatening. My James Carter insisted that if I did not retract the lawsuit, he would disown me, not realizing he had already done that in every meaningful way. Then Olivia Carter stormed into my office building one morning, causing such a scene that security had to escort her out. She screamed about betrayal, about family loyalty, about how I cared more about a car than her mental health. Her meltdown was loud enough that my supervisor pulled me aside to remind me that personal issues could not disrupt the workplace. Shame crept up my spine, hot and cold at the same time. That night, another alert came to my phone. Someone was trying to open my apartment door. I checked the footage and saw my Laura Carter pounding on it, shouting my name, furious that the old key did not work. I forwarded the video to my attorney immediately. The next day, my family sent me a terrible Photoshop attempt of what they claimed was proof I had gifted the car to Olivia Carter. My lawyer nearly choked laughing, but she also noted it could add charges for falsifying evidence. I met Brian and Sophia at a cafe in Santa Monica that weekend, needing grounding. Brian looked at me and said, "I am proud of you. I have never seen you stand up for yourself like this." Sophia leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "People who cross your boundaries once will cross them again. You are doing the right thing." Their support gave me the clarity I had been losing under the weight of it all. 3 days before the hearing, the court sent the official notice. I spent 2 nights sorting documents and finalizing statements, barely sleeping. The night before the hearing, my Laura Carter called one last time. She cried about Olivia Carter being on the brink, blamed me for pushing her too far, and insisted I was destroying the family. But behind her voice, I heard waves crashing and seagull sounds I recognized from her favorite beach in Malibu. She was not at home comforting Olivia. She was on vacation. That was the moment the last piece of illusion fell away. When the court email arrived with final instructions, I stared at it for minutes before whispering to myself, "Tomorrow, I take back what is mine." With that, the door opened to the moment everything would come to light. The courthouse felt colder than I expected. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, harsh and unforgiving, and every sound echoed off the polished floors like it was meant to remind me I was standing at a crossroads. As I entered the courtroom, my pulse thudded steadily in my ears. My family sat across the aisle, my Laura Carter with her lips pressed tight, my James Carter looking stiff and righteous. Olivia Carter slumped in her seat, but fully made up, ready for a performance. I took my seat with my attorney beside me, and for a moment everything went still. This was where the truth would finally be stripped bare. Their lawyer moved first, standing with the confidence of someone paid well to distort reality. He claimed I had a history of emotional instability, that I had lashed out at family members, that I was unpredictable and aggressive. He insisted the sale of the car was a necessary intervention to teach me responsibility. He painted me as selfish, volatile, detached from family values. Then he claimed I had willingly given the car to Olivia Carter, framing the entire transaction as a heartfelt gesture I now regretted. Every word was carefully crafted to make me look like the problem. Then Olivia Carter stood. I was not prepared for how easily she lied. She said I had shoved her during arguments, smashed objects in anger, made her feel unsafe. She spoke with trembling hands, pausing to wipe non-existent tears. Each accusation landed like a slap I did not see coming. Hearing my own sister fabricating memories in front of strangers made my stomach twist. For the first time in a long time, I felt something close to heartbreak. My attorney rose calmly when it was our turn. She started with the simplest piece, the video footage. On the screen, the court watched my Laura Carter and James Carter entering my apartment without permission. Once in the early morning, once late at night. Then she displayed the garage log showing the exact moment the car was moved at 3:00 a.m., aligned with camera footage of figures who could only be my parents. The forged sales document appeared next, projected in crisp clarity, complete with the shaky imitation of my signature. Then came the party video. Olivia Carter's deleted story filled the screen. Her laughing with friends, holding a drink, sitting on my furniture, saying clearly, "He has no idea we are using his place. Who cares?" The courtroom fell into a thick, suffocating silence. Olivia's face drained of color. When my James Carter tried to justify their actions by saying they had only checked the apartment to ensure my safety, my attorney played the hallway footage of my Laura Carter opening my private file cabinet. The contradiction was immediate, and even the judge looked unimpressed. Finally, I stood. My throat tightened, but my voice stayed steady. "I am not here because of a car," I said. "I am here because they believe they own my life, because they thought they could take whatever they wanted, and I would not fight back." My chest felt tight as I spoke, but the truth felt lighter than the silence I had held on to for years. And then my Laura Carter snapped. She jumped to her feet and shouted, "We raised him for 30 years. Everything he has belongs to this family." Her voice cracked through the courtroom, echoing in a way no argument could undo. The judge silenced her quickly, but the damage was done. Her words revealed the motive behind everything. The verdict came down harder than I expected. My parents were found guilty of unlawful entry, property damage, theft, and falsifying documents. They were ordered to pay compensation and legal fees, and because of the amount owed, they would have to sell their Pacific Palisades, Los Angeles home. When it ended, my Laura Carter called me a traitor. Olivia Carter cried without looking at me. My James Carter could not meet my eyes. I walked out of the courtroom feeling victorious and hollow at the same time, like I had won something but lost something that had already been gone for years. And standing outside that courthouse with the echo of their accusations fading behind me, I realized something simple but freeing. Sometimes walking away from the people who raised you is the only way to save the person you are becoming. This was not a victory over them. It was a victory for myself. If you have ever fought to protect your own worth, I would love to know you are here. And if my story resonates, subscribe so we can walk through the next chapter.